I used to work the overnight shift at a marathon just off Route 23, about 10 minutes outside a little town in Ohio. Nothing fancy, 2 gas pumps, a couple of broken soda machines, a coffee pot that always tasted like burnt plastic, and a parking lot that looked empty even when it had 6 cars in it. I got that job in the summer of 2019 because I needed something quiet. I had just moved out of my ex's place and I wanted a routine that didn't leave much room for thinking. So from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., it was just me, a radio under the counter, and the same 3 truck drivers who came through every night for coffee and cigarettes. The weird part is, the night it started, nothing was off. That was the whole problem. I clocked in, checked the cooler, counted the drawer, and wrote the time on the paper log like I always did. At 11:42, I made myself a cup of coffee and stood by the front windows watching headlights roll past on the highway. Around midnight, I heard a soft tap on the glass by the front door. Just one tap. I looked up expecting some kid messing around in the lot, but there was nobody there. Only the orange glow from the streetlight and my reflection staring back at me. I remember checking the door lock out of habit. It was still secure. I went back to the register, took a sip of coffee, and tried not to be the kind of person who jumps at every little sound. Night shifts mess with your head like that. Every squeak feels personal. At 12:18, a white pickup pulled into pump 2. I watched a guy fill his tank, buy a pack of Marlboros, and leave. He wore a gray hoodie and kept his cap low. Normal enough. He even said, "Long night ahead," when I handed him his change. I told him, "Same for me," and he laughed on his way out. 10 minutes later, I saw the same white pickup again. Same dented front bumper, same left headlight out. It rolled past the front windows slow. Like the driver was checking the store. Then it turned into the lot and parked at the far edge near the dumpster. I stood still behind the counter and watched the truck in the glass. The cab light came on. I could see a hand on the steering wheel. Then the engine shut off. I called out, "Pump's working fine," because that's what you say when a customer parks weird at night. Nobody answered. The driver's door stayed closed. After about a minute, the truck pulled out and drove away without stopping at a pump. I told myself it was somebody lost. People did weird stuff out there all the time. Wrong turn, fatigue, bad directions. Route 23 has long stretches where the road signs feel spaced out by somebody guessing. At 1:03, the motion light on the side of the building flicked on. I looked at the monitor over the register and saw movement near the dumpster. Not fast, just a shape crossing the back lot from left to right. I grabbed the flashlight from under the counter and went to the side door. I opened it a crack and stepped into the air behind the store. The gravel was bright under the floodlight. The lid dumpster was closed. The back fence sat still in the dark. I swept the light across the lot. Nothing. Then I saw muddy footprints near the drain. One set, barely deep enough to catch water. They led from the fence line to the side door, then stopped. I stood there listening to the hum from the cooler motors inside and the low buzz of the insect light above the door. Then I heard another tap. It came from the other side of the brick wall, right beside my shoulder. I backed into the store and shut the door. My hands were shaking a little, so I checked the monitor again. The side lot was empty. The footprints were still there in the gravel. Nothing else moved. I called my manager Rick because that was the official move for anything strange. He answered on the 3rd ring, sounding half asleep. I told him some guy was hanging around the back of the store and asked if he wanted me to call the sheriff's office. Rick said, "You probably just scared off a drifter. Lock the back door and keep the front lit." Then he hung up. At 2:11, the coffee pot in the break area clicked off by itself. I had not touched it in an hour. The room was quiet except for the radio, which had drifted into static. I walked back there and saw the pot empty, but the counter beside it was wet. I touched the counter. Cold water, clear, not coffee. I looked up at the ceiling tiles and saw a thin line of moisture running along the seam above the sink. It dripped once, right in front of me, onto the floor. The store had a leak before, but never there. I followed the line with my eyes, and it led straight across the break room, over the doorway, and into the stockroom. I left the lights on and walked to the stockroom with the flashlight. The door was already open a few inches. I knew I had closed it earlier because I always closed it. I pushed it wider and scanned the shelves. The back wall was lined with cases of water and paper towels. In the far corner behind the cleaning supplies, someone had stacked 3 empty cardboard boxes into a seat. On top of them sat a styrofoam coffee cup from our store. The cup was still warm. I don't know why that hit me harder than the footprints. It wasn't the cup by itself. It was the fact that somebody had been there long enough to make coffee, sit down, and leave the cup behind like they belonged in the room. I checked the stockroom floor. One set of wet footprints crossed the concrete, circled the stocked boxes, and stopped at the back wall. I stepped closer and shined the light on the cinder block. There was a vent cover near the floor that I had never noticed before. It was painted the same dirty beige as the wall, held on by 2 rusted screws, and one corner had been bent outward. I crouched down and put my hand near the vent. Air moved through it. Not much, just enough to feel a draft on my fingers. Then I heard a voice from inside the wall. Low, close. It said, "You're late." I stood up so fast I hit my head on the shelf. I remember the pain more clearly than the fear, which sounds stupid, but that's how it was. My first thought was that somebody was messing with me through the vents. Then I heard the same voice again, and it was right behind the metal. I backed out of the stockroom, slammed the door, and locked it with the key hanging on my belt. I grabbed my phone and called 911 while I walked toward the front counter. The dispatcher asked for the address. I gave it. While I was talking, the motion light in the parking lot came on again. I looked through the front window and saw the white pickup from earlier sitting by pump 2. This time, the driver's door was open. I watched a man step out of the truck and walk toward the store. Gray hoodie, low cap, same as before. He moved slow, like he knew exactly where he was going. He stopped at the glass, looked straight at me, and raised one hand. I told the dispatcher, "He's here right now," but my voice cracked on the last word. The man pulled a key ring from his pocket and held it up to the window. There was a store key on it, the kind only managers had. I looked at the back office door. It was half open. I had locked it an hour earlier. I grabbed the cash drawer, left it open, and ran out the side door toward my car behind the building. I could hear the dispatcher still talking through the phone speaker in my hand, asking me to stay on the line. I crossed the gravel, got in, locked the doors, and started the engine. As I pulled out onto the road, I saw the store lights go dark one row at a time. I drove straight to the sheriff's office in town. I parked under the floodlights and waited there until deputies came out. 2 of them went back with me. The 3rd stayed with me as I explained everything as best I could. When we got back to the marathon, the front door was locked. The side door was locked. The stockroom was empty. No truck, no footprints in the gravel. The vent cover in the back room was screwed shut again. One deputy asked Rick for the manager keyring. Rick checked his pocket, then the drawer, then his truck. The keyring showed up in the cash office, on the desk, sitting beside a paper cup with fresh coffee in it. Rick went pale when he saw that cup. He said he had left the building at 8:30 p.m. and gone home. The deputies asked Rick why his keyring was in the store. He kept saying he didn't know. One of the officers pulled the employee log from the back office. In the handwriting column, there was an extra entry at 1:47 a.m. It was signed with my name. It was my exact signature. Same sloppy first initial, same long slash through the last name. I was standing right there when they showed it to me. I had never been in that office that night. I had never touched that log after midnight. The sheriff kept the page. I quit the job the next morning and never went back. A week later, I got a call from a guy who said he had taken over the overnight shift. He asked me one thing before he hung up. He said, "Did they ever fix the crawl space behind the stockroom?" I asked him what crawl space. He went quiet for a second, and then he said, "The one with the coffee cup. I still check the back seat before I unlock my car." I used to work nights as a security guard at a warehouse outside Greenville, Indiana. Nothing glamorous, just me, a coffee pot that tasted burnt by 11 p.m., and a monitor wall that showed the same empty loading docks over and over. Most nights, I'd do my rounds, check the doors, sign the log, and sit back down until sunrise. The place sat off Highway 27, past a gas station and a tire shop that closed at 6. By midnight, the whole road went dead. Trucks stopped, the office windows went black, even the wind felt like it had somewhere else to be. My shift started at 10 p.m. I'd clock in, walk through the front office, and make my first loop around the building. That was the easy part. The hard part was staying awake after 2 a.m., so I got into habits. Coffee at 11, second round at 1. Check the east fence at 1:30. Check the rear dock at 2. Same every night. On a Thursday in late October, I noticed something small. The sign-in sheet had an extra line at the bottom. It was already filled out. Same blue pen we kept at the desk. It said, D. Harlan, Security. My name is Mike Harlan. There was no D. Harlan on the schedule, and nobody else worked nights. I stared at it for a second, then laughed because that seemed easier than thinking about it. I crossed out the line, wrote error, and kept going. At 1:17 a.m., I came back from the east fence and found the break room light on. I knew I had turned it off. The coffee pot was still warm. A fresh mug sat on the counter next to mine, filled halfway. I lived on bad coffee, so I checked the mug first. It was the same cheap diner brand we kept in the cabinet. No one had been in the break room when I left. I was alone in the building. I told myself maybe I had forgotten to shut off the light. It happens when you work nights long enough. Then I saw the logbook. I kept the book in the front office, next to the radio. I opened it every hour and wrote down the time, anything unusual, and whether all doors were secure. On that page, below my lost entry, there was a fresh line in my handwriting. That was the part that made my neck tighten. Same slant, same pressure on the letters. It read, East dock door checked. He's here. I remember standing there with the pen in my hand, trying to figure out if somebody had messed with me. One of the forklift guys, maybe? Maybe one of the supervisors had a stupid joke going. I checked the front office. Empty. I checked the hallway. Empty. The radio on my belt gave one burst of static, then went quiet again. I walked the whole first floor again. Front office, break room, hallway, men's restroom, supply closet, back to the front desk. Every door was still shut. When I got back to the monitor wall, the camera on the east dock was already playing. It was live. That was the problem. I could see the light fence, the loading bay, the chain link fence beyond it. And right there, at the far end of the frame, stood a man in a dark security jacket. He was facing away from the camera, hands clasped behind his back, standing still beside the pallet stack. I froze because I knew every uniform in that building. We had dark navy jackets with Miller Logistics security stitched on the chest. That was our whole look. But this guy wasn't wearing ours. I grabbed the handheld radio. Control, this is Mike. I've got someone on East Dock. Send Curtis over there now. Curtis was my supervisor on the day shift. He lived 10 minutes away and hated being called after midnight. The radio hissed once, no reply. I tried again, nothing. I looked back at the camera. The man had turned. He was too far away for a clean face shot, but I could see enough. Older, thin, pale gray hair cut short, and he was wearing a security jacket with no patch on the chest, just a blank rectangle where the name should have been. He raised one hand and pointed at the camera. I backed up into the desk and hit the panic button under the counter. That was a real button, wired to the local sheriff's office. I had never pressed it before. There was a little red light above it. It came on, then it stayed on. I kept staring at the dock heed. The man walked toward the loading bay doors at a normal pace, like he belonged there. I left the office and went straight to the east dock, keeping the radio in one hand and my flashlight in the other. The hallway was quiet. The concrete floor carried every step I took. At the end of the hall, I found the east dock door open 6 inches. I know I had locked it. I always locked it. That door had a heavy manual bar and I had checked it twice on the last round. But now it was open just enough for a slice of cold air to come through. I shoved the door wider and hit the flashlight beam across the dock. Nobody was there, just pallets, shrink wrap, and the yellow lines painted on the floor. The smell hit me next. Damp dirt, old metal, like a basement after a storm. Then I heard a boot step behind me. I spun around so fast I almost dropped the light. The hallway was empty. The front office was behind me. The dock was in front of me. Nothing moved, but the radio on my belt clicked once, like somebody had pressed the transmit button. A voice came through. Low, male, calm. Mike. I said, "Who is this?" The voice answered from the radio and from the hallway speaker at the same time. "You're on my shift." I ran. I went back through the hall, through the office, and into the front lobby so fast I slammed my shoulder into the door frame. The camera screens were still on. The east dock feed was black now. The break room camera showed the empty table. The hallway camera showed me standing in the frame with the flashlight shaking in my hand. Behind me, in the reflection of the monitor glass, a man stood in the office doorway. He was close enough now that I could see the jacket better. It had stitching on the back. Not our logo, just one word across the shoulders. Supervisor. His face looked tired, not angry, not wild, just tired in a way that made my stomach turn. He topped the wall beside the door twice. Then the front office door opened from the inside. That was the part that really messed with me. I was inside the office. The door was behind me. It had been shut. I had watched him standing outside it on the monitor reflection. But the latch clicked, and the door swung inward like somebody from the other side had opened it. I heard a car horn outside, then another. The sheriff had arrived. I remember shouting their names before I even saw them. 2 deputies came through the front lobby with their hands on their holsters, and the man in the doorway was gone. They searched the office, the dock, the whole building, and the yard around the fence line. Nobody found anything. They checked the cameras, they checked the lock on the front office door. The east dock door was found shut and barred from the inside. Before they left, one of the deputies asked to see the sign-in sheet. The bottom line had changed. It no longer said D. Harlan, security. It said M. Harlan, night supervisor. Curtis came in the next morning and told me the warehouse had never had a night supervisor on staff. He also told me something else. 20 years earlier, a security guard named Martin Harlan worked that same property when it was still a factory. Same last name, same first initial, different middle name. I asked him what happened to Martin. Curtis looked at me like I was supposed to know. He said he disappeared on a night shift and they never found the guy. I quit the next day. But sometimes when I'm pulling into my driveway after dark, I still hear my own voice on the radio say, "You're on my shift." If you ever get rerouted onto a county road after midnight and the GPS starts acting like it knows the area better than you do, just keep going. Don't stop for the first weird thing you see. I learned that on a road trip through southern Missouri in the summer of 2021, and I still think about it every time I hear a car door close behind me. Me and my buddy Aaron were coming back from a weekend at Table Rock Lake. Nothing dramatic, just 2 tired guys, a half-empty cooler, gas station coffee, and way too many miles left before home. We were in my old silver Accord, windows cracked, country stations fading in and out. It was one of those nights where the highway feels endless and normal. You know the kind.
the kind where you start talking about random stuff because the road gets boring. We left Branson a little after 9. By 11, we were cutting east on Highway 60. And by midnight, the GPS had us leaving the main road for a detour around construction near a town called Ava. The signal kept dropping. Aaron was messing with his phone trying to load the route again. And I remember laughing because every time he tilted it toward the window, the little blue dot spun in circles. We passed a closed diner, a dark feed store, and then a gas station with one flickering sign and a single pump light on. That station was the first thing that felt off. There was an older woman behind the counter, white hair, reading glasses on a chain. She looked up when we came in, then looked past us at the parking lot like she was checking who was waiting outside. I grabbed a soda and asked if the restroom worked. She said, "For now." Then she nodded toward the map on the wall and told us, real calm, "If your phone sends you down County Road 14, stay on it. Don't take the gravel turn by the cattle fence." I asked her why. She just said, "Because people miss the bridge." Aaron laughed when we got back in the car. He said, "What bridge? We're not even close to a bridge." I laughed too, because that's what you do when somebody says something weird in a small town and you don't want to make it bigger than it is. Then we pulled back onto the road, and 10 minutes later, the GPS told me to turn right onto County Road 14. The road narrowed fast. Asphalt turned to cracked blacktop, then to packed gravel. Tree lines closed in on both sides. Every mailbox looked the same. White posts, rusted numbers, porch lights off. We passed one farmhouse with a red pickup under a tarp, and then another with a basketball hoop leaning into the yard. Aaron stopped talking. He kept looking out his window like he expected to see a sign for the main highway. About 15 minutes in, a set of headlights showed up behind us, a white pickup. Clean, same distance the whole time. I slowed down to let it pass. It slowed too. I sped up. It matched me. Aaron turned around and looked through the back window. He said the truck had no logo on the door and no front plate. Missouri requires a front plate, so that detail stuck with me. He stared at it for a second and said, "Man, that dude's just following us." Then he checked his phone and said the signal was gone completely. We came around a bend and saw a church on the left side of the road. Small white building, one light on over the entrance. The same white pickup was parked in front of it, angled toward the road. I slowed to a crawl. The driver's door was open. Nobody was inside. Aaron said, "Nope," and locked his door. I kept driving. A mile later, we passed the same church again. Same light, same open door, same pickup, same angle. That was the point where the whole night changed for me. I remember my mouth going dry, but I still kept telling myself there had to be another road running parallel to us. The county roads out there can do that. They twist around fields and cut back on themselves. That explanation made sense for maybe 30 more seconds. Then we saw the gas station we'd stopped at earlier. Same flickering sign, same one working pump, same older woman behind the glass. She was looking right at our car like she'd been waiting for us to come back. I pulled in because I wanted a second opinion from a real person, and because the truck behind us had turned off its headlights and was parked at the edge of the lot. The woman stepped outside before I even killed the engine. She looked at our faces, then at the gravel on the tires, and said, "You took the wrong turn." Aaron asked her what she meant. She pointed down the road and said, "The bridge has been out for 12 years. I stared at her and told her we had been on the road the whole time. She did this tiny thing with her head, like she was deciding whether to say more. Then she asked, "Did anybody stop you?" I told her about the white pickup. Her face changed, just a little. She said, "Did the driver ask to come with you?" Aaron looked at me before I could answer. I remembered something I'd ignored about 10 minutes earlier near the church. When we passed the pickup, there had been a folded hand on the inside of the open door. Just a hand, like somebody inside had reached out and then pulled back. We were still standing by my car when the pickup's engine started up behind us. No headlights, just the sound. The woman from the station backed up toward the door and said, "Get in your car, leave now." I asked her if we should call the sheriff. She said, "Call him from somewhere else." Then she went inside and locked the door behind her. I got back in, started the engine, and pulled out of the lot with Aaron staring straight ahead. The white pickup followed us for maybe 2 miles. Then the road opened up near a straight stretch, and my headlights hit a falling tree across the shoulder. I swerved around it. Aaron yelled. When I looked in the mirror, the pickup was gone. No headlights, no engine sound, just empty road behind us. We found a motel on the edge of the next town around 1:30 in the morning. One of those older roadside places with a neon vacancy sign and a Coke machine humming by the office door. The clerk was a tired-looking guy in a Cardinals cap. He took one look at us and asked where we'd been driving. I told him. He went quiet. Then he said the same road had been closed after a bridge collapse years ago, and nobody from the county used it anymore. He checked us into room 6 without asking another question. The sheriff showed up at the motel before we fell asleep. 2 deputies, actually. They asked us about the pickup and wrote down every detail we could remember. One of them looked at my phone and asked if we had a dash cam. We did. I'd forgotten it was still running. He pulled the card and played the footage in the office while we stood in the doorway. The first half of the video was boring. Empty road, our headlights, Aaron talking. Then the pickup appeared behind us near the church. It stayed there. No passing, no turnoff, no break in the line of sight. At the station, the footage caught the woman outside the store. It also caught something I hadn't seen in real time. On the recording, the driver's door of my Accord opened at 12:47 a.m., just a few inches, then more. Nobody in my seat moved. Nobody touched the handle. The camera kept rolling. The road noise kept going. And in the last frame before the file cut out, a pale hand came up from the back seat and rested on the top of Aaron's shoulder. We drove home the next morning on the interstate. Full daylight. Lots of traffic. Normal as hell. Aaron never talked about that night again. I did, once, to the deputy on the phone, because I wanted an explanation. He told me the road shouldn't have been open. Then he asked me one question I still can't shake. He asked why the dashcam file had 3 coffees listed on the gas station receipt, when only 2 of us went inside.